All right, Peggy, if you'd like to go ahead and do the introductions.
All righty, thank you. Good evening. My name is Peggy LaPointe from the League of Women Voters of Larimer County. On behalf of the Loveland Public Library and the League, I want to welcome you to this forum for candidates running for Colorado Senate District 23, along with Colorado House Districts 49 and 51. The forum is being live streamed tonight on the Loveland Public Library Facebook page. A video will be posted to the Loveland Public Library voter information webpage and to the webpage of the League of Women Voters of Larimer County. As moderator, I will pose questions to the candidates who will have a set time to answer. To allow all candidates the opportunity to share their views, we're going to be strictly adhering to time limits. League member Tom LaPointe will be our timekeeper this evening. He will alert the candidates when they have 15 seconds to conclude their remarks and then indicate when their time is up. We will open with introductory remarks from each candidate and end with closing remarks from each candidate. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization, not for women only. We do not endorse or oppose any candidate. However, we do take positions on some issues, but only after extensive study of that issue. I encourage you to read information provided by most candidates on our website, which is vote411.org. There you will find unbiased discussion of issues that will appear on your personal ballot, and also accurate election information may be found at vote411.org and at votelarimer.org. We are pleased that most of the candidates are able to join us today. We regret that Sally Bocella, candidate for Senate District 23, is unable to participate. We'll start by letting candidates introduce themselves. Please limit your introductory remarks to 1.5 minutes. And Barbara Kirkmeyer, candidate for Colorado Senate District 23, welcome, and please share your opening remarks.
Okay, thank you. And of course I'm first. Can you hear me?
Yes.
There we go. Okay, so my name is Barbara Kirkmeyer and I am running for State Senate District 23. So over the course of the last year, we've gone through a pandemic, record loss in jobs, civil unrest. Certainly we're in tough times right now, and it would be easy to take a defeatist attitude towards Colorado future. But quite frankly, I just believe that our future is in our hands, and that with strong leadership and sound decision-making, that Colorado can turn the corner, emerge stronger, and experience brighter days. So in my background, I'm a 4th-generation Coloradoan. I also am currently serving and sitting as a Weld County Commissioner. I am in my 20th year. I also have a small business background where I had a business flower shop in Fort Collins for over 15 years with my sister. And I also have a strong agricultural background. I owned a dairy farm. I grew up on a dairy farm in North Jefferson County. I owned a dairy farm for 15 years, and I've owned irrigated farmlands for up to 27 years. So I'm running for state senate because I believe that we deserve better and that we can do better in this state, and that we need to reopen our state, get our economy going, stand for the rule of law, and encourage prosperity throughout Colorado. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we will hear from Yara Hanlin-Zokaie. She goes by Yara. She's candidate for the Colorado House District 49. Welcome, and please share your opening remarks.
Hello, and thank you so much to the League for putting together this wonderful forum for us this evening. My name is Yara, and I'm running for State House in District 49. I am a child of immigrants. My parents came to this country in the 70s, and through their hard work and their many sacrifices, I was able to not only go to college, but then on to law school as well. I am a tax attorney, and I exclusively represent small businesses from all across our state. Every day I fight for them against the IRS and against the Colorado Department of Revenue. I also many times act as an advisor as well on how to best structure a business to run efficiently and profitably. But what's more important is my job as a mom. I have 2 little boys, a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and I am worried about what our world looks like today. It is my goal to craft policies that will leave them and the future generation with an even better Colorado. And that is why my campaign is centered around giving a voice and advocating for those who aren't currently being represented in our legislature. These groups include small businesses, families, the working class, and our older adults. And it is why I'm 100% grassroots funded. I want to be responsive to these groups, not giant corporations and lobbyists. I hope I can earn your vote this evening, and you can always find out more about me or reach out to me directly at my site, yaraforcolorado.com. Thank you.
Very much. Mike Lynch, also candidate for Colorado House District 49. Welcome, and please share your opening remarks.
Okay, so I've never done this on an iPhone, but I appreciate you guys putting this on. This is wonderful. And I'd like to say son of immigrants, but we came here a long time ago, and it took us multiple generations before we could ever get a college degree. And we've been working hard this entire time to get to the place where Yara got to be. But the systems weren't in place for us to have such a wonderful country that we have right now. And I want to maintain those sort of principles that we have going on right now. The principles of free market capitalism and the free market of us being able to actually be control our own lives. So part of my campaign is to make sure that we reduce the amount of government intervention in our lives. And that's why I'm running for office, because I see our state with overwhelming impact on our daily lives. And we've seen that really be strewed out through this COVID-19 pandemic. Now, that being said, I was born in Colorado. I look forward to serving this district, and I want to apologize now, but I'm unfortunately unable to participate further in this debate, but appreciate you all being here. And if you want to know more about me, it's Lynch for Colorado, Lynch, FOR Colorado.com. Thank you, guys.
Mr. Vern Richardson is also a candidate for Colorado House 51. Welcome, and please share your opening statement.
Hi, I'm Vern Richardson, and I believe that we should all be able to choose who we'd like to represent us in the state legislature. I want to be your choice for HD 51. When my wife passed away after living with MS for years, seeing the challenges we faced, I ended up volunteering for the Disability Advisory Commission to give back to Loveland. I've served since 2012 and chair since 2015. In this time of COVID, I believe the wealth of our community can be tied to the health and well-being of our citizens. We owe it to each other to be responsible. Our elected officials also owe it to each other to work together to provide a safe environment for all of us and can live, work, and thrive and have opportunities for everyone. With the possibility that many jobs may be lost and not coming back from the COVID, the recovery will not just happen. We will need good, sustainable employment opportunities that we can find working together, not divided. I appreciate your time. Thanks. And my name is Vern Richardson, will not be on the ballot. Oh, sorry, I was reading what was on my screen here, sorry.
Mr. Richardson, we'll give you another chance.
Okay, my name will not be on the ballot. Fill in the oval and write in Vern Richardson on the line. Thank you.
Thank
And I
you.
decided to run at the end of July. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. I will rotate the order in which the questions are asked, and I'll try to ask questions to candidates for the same position back to back. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond, and I will repeat questions if you need me to. And when you see your little 15-second warning and your little bell, you need to start concluding, okay? Let us,
Peggy,
yes,
I
ma'am.
think you missed Mr. McKean.
Oh, I beg your pardon, Mr. McKean, please go ahead.
Peggy, you're just fine. I was sitting here, I'm like, I'll just add it to my questions. It'll be fine.
No, please give us your introduction from your tropical island.
So my name is Hugh McKean, and I'm the state representative for House District 51. And indeed, thank you guys very much for putting this on. And Vern, it's good to see you here. Vern and I have seen each other over the years at city council meetings and other things. And thank you for your service on the Disability Commission, because that is very important stuff. You know, I come from a perspective of really just trying to make sure that we do work together, and that we try to kind of put the ability to get things done for Colorado behind the politics. And I was actually in several conversations today about that very thing, that really, once we end up at the Capitol and once we start working on things, often the real rancor sort of dissolves away in probably 7, 8 out of 10 of the issues we talk about. But I think that there are things that differentiate us, and I think they're really important. I've been a Republican since the day I could vote, and I very honestly have just always felt like there are things that I believe in that mean a lot to me and define who I am as a Republican. And they're pretty easy to understand. They're basically 4 basic things. One, I believe in personal responsibility and the rights of the individual. I also believe that we ought to have the smallest government that we can get away with, basically. I believe that we need to be physically accountable, and that really the only engine that drives all this is the free enterprise system. You know, if you get past that, most of those other things are personal choices. So I'll stop now, but I'll add whatever I need to the questions ahead. Thank you, Peggy.
Thank you. Now we will begin with our 1 minute responses to questions for the various candidates. We'll start with Ms. Kirkmeyer. Our first question relates to Proposition 113 on the ballot. The question is, should Colorado become a member of the National Popular Vote Compact? Why or why not?
Very simply, no, we should not. I'll be voting no on 113. I think it actually is taking our vote away from us and taking away our influence on the presidential election, and I don't agree with that at all.
Thank you very much. We'll go now to, would you like me to just call you Yara, or should I stay with Ms. Zokaie?
Please just call me Yara. It's much easier
Okay,
for everyone. Yeah.
We'll go next to Yara. Please give us your opinion on the National Popular Vote Compact.
I am voting yes on this ballot measure. It's 1 person, 1 vote. To me, that makes sense. That's what democracy is all about. Right now, we have people whose vote doesn't count. Let's say you're a Republican in a blue state, which Colorado has now become, then your vote doesn't get accounted for and you don't have a voice. And even further, our presidential candidates are not going to come and campaign and not hear your voice and not try to win your vote over. And I think that's a real issue. I want our presidential candidates to feel like they need to earn every vote and that they should spend their time equally. So the best way to do that is to go to a popular vote system. 1 person, 1 vote, just makes sense.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll go to Mr. Richardson.
You're muted.
Mr.
I'm now muted.
There we go.
Unmuted. Yes, I agree with the agreement, and I would wholeheartedly vote for this. I do want 1 vote for 1 person. And I do also believe that even though the Electoral College has been around for a long time, it's a representative democracy. So we need to support, and actually elect our officials, including the president. That's the only person that's not elected by a popular vote. And as you know, the agreement happens only after electoral college of 270 folks gets there, and we're at 196 now. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. McKean, I have not forgotten you.
Well, I'm voting no on this, and there's a big reason why. I spent a lot of time with the folks from FEMA after our 2013 floods. And one of the amazing things to hear about was that they were coming here from the aftermath of Hurricane Sandy. And as we started talking about what monies we could get and what kind of position we had as a state in terms of those monies, we found out that again and again and again, we were behind Hurricane Sandy for any of that relief money. And what turned out to be the fact in there is that the political pressure from New Jersey was a great deal more powerful than the political pressure from little old Colorado. And I'll tell you what, I do expect my votes to be counted, and they always are. And they always are, especially through our electoral system, because those smaller states have a voice and have a voice in the bigger question that sometimes gets drowned out with politics. So I'll be voting no. I would encourage every single human being I know to vote no. Jenny Art sits next to me and I tell her I'm voting no.
Thank you very much. Now a question about the election process. Mr. McKean, would you begin with answering this question? In Colorado, citizens may launch a recall effort for any stated reason. Do you think Colorado should reform its recall laws? Why or why not?
Well, I don't think we should. I think that the recall has its place here. I think that sometimes it gets abused. I think sometimes it's not logically pursued. But then again, I really don't ever want to limit the recourse that the citizens have of their elected officials or their state. If you're going to talk about getting rid of the recall process, then I think you also have to talk about getting rid of the petition process. That is the very thing that brought the national popular vote question to your ballot this fall. And it got passed in a completely Democrat-controlled legislature and signed by a Democrat governor. And a lot of people in the state said, we don't like it. We don't think it's right. So we're bringing it back to the voters. And I think that's exactly where we need to go. Eventually, I mean, we have our bosses. Our bosses are all of the voters in our districts who can come and tell us, nope, that's not what we want you to do.
Thank you very much. Mr. Richardson?
Repeat the question, please.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Do you think Colorado should reform its recall laws? Why or why not?
Yes, I believe we should reform our recall laws, but I think it's only because of the fact that in recent years, if certain groups decided that they didn't like the outcome of an election, that would be the first reason to go in and try to do recall. I don't think that would be fair to the people who did vote in the election and voted these people in, or whatever was passed. And I think that I'm done with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kirkmeyer?
Okay, and the question, I'm sorry, could you repeat the
Yes,
question, please?
indeed. In Colorado, citizens may launch a recall effort for any stated reason. Do you think Colorado should reform its recall laws? Why or why not?
No, I don't believe that they should reform the recall laws. I think the recall has a purpose. We may not always like it. I myself was subject to an attempt of a recall, but I think, citizens have the ability to hold their elected officials accountable. And this is one of the recourses that they have to do that. And I would not limit it. And with regard to trying to change an election, the law is in place that you can't even start a recall until the person has been in office for at least 6 months. And then if you're within a certain amount of time in an election process, you have to go to that election. You can't just pick a special date, that type of thing. So I think there are a lot of guardrails that are on that. But I think, again, it's a way for citizens to hold their elected officials accountable.
Thank you very much. For our next question, we will start with—
You didn't, Yara.
Oh, Yara, did I skip you? I apologize.
That's all right. Do you want me to answer now?
Yes, please.
Well, I don't think we should be getting rid of the recall. As far as reforming it, I need to look at it in more detail before I can give you an answer on that. I think that is something that is the people's decision and not mine. But we have seen this huge uptick in recalls, and my opinion of recalls is that they were supposed to be for issues of corruption. And what we're seeing is that they're happening for political differences. And I don't believe that should be the intended purpose of the recalls. I don't think that's why that mechanism was originally in place. I think political differences need to be settled at the ballot box. But I think as far as reforming the law goes, I don't think that's my decision to make.
Thank you very much. And for the next question, we will stay with you, Yara. Do you have any ideas for legislation to help deal with the crisis of renters and mortgage holders unable to meet housing expenses due to the loss of income over the last 6 months?
Yeah, thank you for this question, because it is such a huge issue in our state right now. At first it was 25% facing eviction, then it went to 33, and I think the most recent statistic I saw said as much as 36% of our state is facing eviction. And I don't think we've taken enough action here to help people. There's been some local programs that have tried their best, but there's just such a huge amount of people in this horrible situation that there have not been enough resources. And I think that there are some bold moves our state can make to help people. We can put an eviction moratorium in place, and we have the power to negotiate with those that hold, the big companies that hold most mortgages, because we don't just want to forgive rent and leave people with mortgages out to dry either. So I think that our state needs to take some bold moves here. It's a crisis. We're seeing a rise in homelessness, and it's from families being put out on the street because they lost a job during this crisis. That's a huge problem.
Thank you very much. Ms. Kirkmeyer? Do you need me to repeat the question? Oh, no, I think you're still muted.
Because that says that the host muted me.
There we go.
All right, yes, could you repeat the question, please?
You bet. Do you have any ideas for legislation to help deal with the crisis of renters and mortgage holders unable to meet their housing expenses due to the loss of income over the last 6 months?
I think this is an area where government really needs to not get involved. I think, it's not about a bunch of big companies that are just, you're going to hold them accountable for the loss of the job and not be able to evict someone who can't pay, and therefore then they can't pay their mortgage. I think what that will do is just cause an exponentially different type of problem and just put us further into the hole. I know a lot of individuals who have rentals, and they have apartment buildings, or they're renting out homes or things of that nature. And, quite frankly, they know how to deal with the folks who are renting from them. They weren't going out and evicting them in the first place. So I think this question is something, or, when this issue has come up down at the legislature, it's basically you're trying to find a solution to a problem that doesn't actually exist. I mean, if people are being evicted, that there's all sorts of other reasons with that. I just don't think government should get in the middle of that. And I think we need to be careful on how we do try and go after that and mandate to businesses and to those folks who have these rentals, because we'll just put them in the hole, and then they'll be out of business. And then where are we going to be?
Thank you very much. Mr. McKean?
Well, I don't need to have you repeat the question, because that's how this thing takes 2 hours if we just keep but anyway, I'm just saying. No, this is a balance issue, and it's I in many ways agree with the sentiment that government shouldn't get deeply involved here, because you end up with, what exactly is the amount of aid or help that you can give. But I think also you've got to balance the private property rights of the individuals who either hold the mortgage or hold or are landlords or whatever else. And I actually take some umbrage with the figures that we're hearing in the the high percentages of evictions. I asked this question just a week ago, and it's not true. So the eviction rates are actually much lower, partly because usually this gets worked out at some point, because everybody wants to work this out. And so I think that, one of the things we've got to look at is, what are we doing to drive up the cost of building a home in Colorado? What can we do to make sure that houses are more affordable? But I think that truly there are a lot of programs out there right now today.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. Our
I
next
would be
question-
Mr. Richardson, but I'm going to be Mr. McKean for now.
Our next question, it will be about housing. And we'll
Mr.
start.
Richardson does need to be able to.
Oh,
answer.
Mr. Richardson, I'm sorry. I've done it again. Please go ahead with that question about evictions.
Yes, thanks, Hugh, for keeping me alive. Anyway, this is something that every month when I make my house payment, I see it online. They're asking about COVID. I believe that a lot of the, let's say, mortgage holders are already looking at this and trying to see how they're going to help the people. I don't know how we could force them to actually forgive debt or do anything like that. So this is something I really don't have a good answer for, but I'd like to learn more about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson, and we'll stay with you for the next question. The Colorado Division of Housing, Department of Local Affairs, has developed a mobile home park oversight program. If you're familiar with this, what are the benefits and disadvantages to the owners of mobile home parks and to those who reside in mobile home parks?
I have to plead ignorance on this one. Sorry.
Okay, that's all right. We'll go on to Mr. McKean if he has a comment about it.
Well, I do. I was contacted by some of our mobile home residents here in Loveland who were restricted in the kinds of homes and the age of homes that they could live in a mobile home park. And they could not buy their lot and they could not do a lot of things. And so this conversation was kind of the outgrowth of a lot of those type of contacts, because many of us in the legislature were getting those. I think that, again, we're talking about a balance point. We're talking about people who own mobile home parks and are sort of being forced by the heavy hand of government to change the way that they're doing their business. However, we also have people who are at the least able, they are the least able to change their circumstance. They either have a fixed income or they have a mobile home that is perfectly fine and suits them, but somehow doesn't suit the mobile home park. So I think that it's actually a point of conversation between the people who rent the lots in mobile home parks and the owners of them. It is sort of morphed into, well, can't we just force the owners to sell to the tenants? And I don't think that that's a proper role, but I do think it's a good point of conversation.
Thank you very much. Yara, we will move to you for this question now.
Well, thank you for asking this question, because I do think it is an important issue in our state. So what I've seen as an issue and what I've heard about primarily as an issue from people in this living situation is that you can buy your home, but you don't own the lot that it's on. You have to pay rent for that. And the developers have the ability to hike up that rent. And we've seen entire developments where people are put out of their home because that rent price was driven so high up, to try to bring in, to try to drive people out and bring a new, different group of people in. So I think it is a very big problem. The Attorney General has endorsed my campaign, and I think that there are some things that we could do working with him to set some more restrictions on the developers and to pursue some more aggressive action, as other states have successfully done.
Thank you. Ms. Kirkmeyer? Oops, she's still muted.
There we go. Okay. So I actually was the executive director of the Department of Local Affairs and oversaw the Division of Housing. That's one of the divisions within there. So quite frankly, I'm not really sure why state government is getting involved in this. First of all, there is a balance. I mean, I appreciate that the conversation needs to be started to some degree. And there does need to be a balance between private property rights and the issues that you're all speaking to, or that have been brought up. But quite frankly, this is a local government issue. This is an issue that has to deal with zoning and subdivision regulations. This is something that should have been taken care of possibly with covenants as it went through the subdivision regulations and went through the zoning process in the first place at the local government level. So I'm not sure why the Division of Housing thinks it's appropriate or proper for them to intervene or interject themselves into what should be a local elected officials issue and authority, quite frankly, and within their purview and within their jurisdiction. So again, I think these things can be taken care of, and they can be taken care of through, again, subdivision and zoning regulations and working through the process when the developer has first come in to develop the mobile home park in the first place.
Thank you. Now a question on the environment, and we will begin with Yara. What can the state and you as a legislator do to help prevent and mitigate the effects of wildfires in Colorado?
Yeah, thank you for that question. You know, I never thought I'd be seeing ash fall from the sky. So, and in my district, which is Larimer and a lot of Larimer County and part of Weld County, we actually have some really high rates of asthma. So I know a lot of people in my district who have been stuck inside a lot because of the air quality, and it has been very difficult. I think that we do need to make sure that we are cleaning up our forests and we're taking precautions so that we can prevent these fires before they start. And that is something that the state should have some more oversight. People working on these fires are overworked and underfunded. So we do need to pay attention to what we can do to help out those people who are working so hard to clean that up. But I also think we need to address the fact that climate change plays a role in this as well. These fires are burning longer, they're covering a wider area than they ever have before, and to pretend that climate change is not contributing to that, I think is very ignorant.
Thank you very much. Mr. Richardson?
I believe a lot of the fire damage and causes of the fire is a lot from beetle kill and just the condition of the forests. We need to have some kind of way to go in and actually try to reduce all the dead timber that is the fuel for the fires. I think that would be one way to start with this. I don't know if clear cutting or opening it up to companies to just come in and get rid of everything and reforest it would be a good idea. And I think that might be too costly. That's what I have on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McKean?
I'll second a little bit of what Vern said. I mean, we're seeing a lot of beetle kill pine. I think we're seeing very, very truthfully a change in climate cycles. And honestly, one of the things we had this spring was a very wet spring, a lot of underbrush. Fire moved across territory where it normally wouldn't. And so we have those incidents where fires are jumping where we normally would think we'd see them. You know, the challenge is that we have long since forgotten that the United States Forest Service is resident in the Department of Agriculture, and that this is a resource that we're supposed to manage, and we're supposed to have been managing it for the last several generations, where we don't just clear cut everything. We go in and we literally timber out areas, and we do more timber sales. And so with the reduction in timber sales and the increase in beetle kill, we're faced with a lot of these issues. The state doesn't have money to fix this, but I think in working with the Forest Service and actually places up here like biochar who are taking dead timber that they can burn and skeletonize, I think we have a lot of answers to this question.
Thank you. Ms. Kirkmeyer?
Okay. So again, during my time at the Department of Local Affairs, I actually served as the state's emergency manager for over a year and managed our response to Hurricane Katrina and worked with the victims there. So there are 4 tenets to emergency management. It's mitigation, preparation, response, and recovery. So to mitigate the wildfires in the first place, I think what Vern and what Hugh were saying is right on. You do have to manage the resource. That's part of mitigation. You need to mitigate the overgrowth and the dead areas, the dead trees, that type of thing. You can't just leave them lay there and expect nothing to happen, kind of thing. So you do have to go in and do that type of mitigation throughout. There does need to be a strong partnership between both the federal government, the state, and then local firefighters, all who are involved in how to respond to these wildfires that we have. And then there's the whole recovery stage, which for the forest, and I know back during my time underneath Governor Bill Owens, there was a whole plan that was developed in the Department of Natural Resources with regard to forest restoration. So I think that's part of the issue as well. So I think going back and actually looking at some of those plans and maybe dusting them off, if they haven't been using them, they should actually go back and look at the state emergency operations plan and the emergency support functions that are within that plan, and then go back and now after we've been going through these, or as we're going through these, and when we do get to the recovery stage with the forest restoration, they do need to do an after action briefing, working with, again, all of the folks that are responsible, not only for the forest restoration and the recovery side of it, but going back and talking about how do we really do a better job at mitigation. Because in some of the conversations I've been having with like rural electric companies, they're talking about how they can't even get in and take care of their resources, their utilities, and
Claire, you've gone over your
things
time.
they have. Okay, so sorry, I couldn't hear the bell.
That's all right. That's a lot to say. Another environmental question, and we'll begin with you, Ms. Kirkmeyer. What one environmental issue is most critical for the future of Colorado, and what ideas do you have for resolving that issue?
I think the top probably environmental issue for the state of Colorado that needs to get resolved is the air quality issue that we have within our state. I think the state has done a very good job under Governor Owens, under Governor Hickenlooper, even under Governor Ritter to some degree, with going through and mitigating and working to eliminate some of the issues with regard to air quality and trying to deal with our ozone issue. The reality is, though, with the air quality and with the ozone and the greenhouse gas issue is that, you know, here in the Front Range, in Larimer and Weld counties, Broomfield counties, all the way down through the Front Range, we're in what's called a non-attainment area. And quite frankly, if we did absolutely nothing, if we didn't have even any people here, we would still have an issue with air quality in our state. So I think, again, I think that's probably one of the largest issues. I think we need to look at it from a science and fact-based situation and not just go after whoever we think we want to go after this year kind of thing. And I think we need to look at every possible way of looking to reduce our air quality, but then also come to the reality that it's, you know, there is like 45% of the non-attainment with regard to ozone that's coming from outside of the non-attainment area. And there's quite frankly not a lot we can do about it.
Thank you very much. Yara, we will go to you with this question next.
Thank you. I think the number one issue, environmental issue for our state, our country, and our planet is climate change. And I think we need to start taking it a little more seriously. The impacts of it are here. We're seeing it when ash is falling from the sky, when our weather is jumping from snowing and back to sunny again in the beginning of September. And the scientists have told us that we're not going to be able to go back. You know, all the impact and everything that has happened, the damage that has been done, there's no going backwards from that. All we can do is look on how we change things going forward. And this is an issue that honestly makes me very concerned for the future of my children and my grandchildren if we do not do something about it. It's time that we stop debating whether climate change is real or not. 97% of scientists agree that it's real and that it's man-made. I say that we listen to those scientists, we stop debating whether it's real and start talking about what we're going to do.
Thank you very much. Mr. McKean?
Thank you. I think, you know, that much of what Ms. Kirkmeyer said is accurate. I think one of the biggest things we have a problem with is data. And so if we're gonna deal with some of our air quality, we're gonna have to know what we're measuring. When we had Senate Bill 181 and we've had other bills, one of my questions is, where's the funding for the giant glass dome? Because we keep thinking that we're gonna make all these changes here in Colorado and we're gonna go 100% renewable. We're gonna get rid of all this carbon. And then we don't take into account the amount of smoke we're getting from California, the amount of pollution that we get from India and from China. And so in so many ways, it's very much a holistic global solution, but we're not having that conversation. So within the state of Colorado, I think we need more data. I think that we really need to know exactly how to quantify what we do on the Front Range and the changes that we make across our state with what is coming into our state so that we actually know what we're talking about. That's the problem, is a lot of people have this conversation and simply don't have the information to fund it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Richardson.
There you go. I got it. I think climate change is real. I think that we need, as Hugh just said, we have pollutants coming from all over the world and into our state. We need to get back to finding out how we can get rid of pollution and reduce it so that we can do something about climate change. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next question will deal with state revenue. We'll begin with Yara. What are your priorities for retaining important government services in light of expected shortfalls in revenue due to the recent downturn in the economy?
Yeah, so it's going to be very difficult to balance our budget, and we are going to have to make some tough choices. Essential services, of course, we want to look at first, things like our infrastructure. I think everybody can agree, regardless of your political party, that infrastructure is important, and we have to make sure we're maintaining that. Schools, I believe, are an essential function that the government helps fund. But so often when we're in a time where we have a budget shortfall like this, we look to make cuts and we negotiate on the backs on our most vulnerable groups. We negotiate on the backs of our families. We negotiate on the backs of the working class. We negotiate on the backs of small businesses. And we don't turn to the giant corporations and the handouts that we give them. So my priorities are with the people who are most vulnerable, and they're the groups that I just mentioned. I think that we can close corporate loopholes that are used in our tax code to cheat our state out of money, to bring more money in. And I think it's time that we stop looking at the little guy to sacrifice in times of financial hardship.
Thank you very much. Mr. Richardson?
Thank you. I agree with some of the things that Yara was saying. Also, though, we need to find new revenue streams, because this is something that you can't just stop and stop spending and balance the budget. So I don't have a good answer for you, and I'm not going to suggest new taxes for you, because I don't think that that would go over very well with half the crew here. But we need to develop some way to generate more income for the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kirkmeyer?
Yes, so I believe I told you I was a county commissioner. Well, in my county, we have absolutely no debt, no long-term, no short-term debt. We don't have a county sales tax, and we actually have lowered our mill levy to the tune of over $500 million that is kept in our taxpayers' pockets. So the fact that people don't think we can balance level of service with the amount of revenues, and revenues are taxes. That's what revenues are for government. So when you talk about increasing revenues, you're talking about increasing taxes on the people. And I don't agree with that. But you can balance the level of service with the amount of revenues that you bring in. And that would be a responsible thing to do as a government. We should only be doing those things for which people cannot take care of and do for themselves. Public safety, education, and infrastructure. I would agree with Yara on that. But the fact that we don't go after the little person, I don't know where that came from, but we don't do that. What this state needs to do is actually prioritize and tighten its belt instead of trying to think of more ways to tax us. And because right now is the worst time, not that any time is good, but right now would be the worst time to think of the ways to put additional taxes on businesses, on individuals. We need to figure out how to get our economy reopened in a safe and responsible manner. We need to get our tourism industry back into business. We need to look at what's going on in agriculture and with oil and gas. Those are our three major economies.
Thanks very much. Mr. McKean, we'll begin with you on the next question.
He needs to answer that question.
Oh, I see.
I was just going to just sort of mix them together.
What do I have against you, Mr. McKean?
Not a thing, not a thing. I'm just quiet and I sit in the corner.
Please go ahead.
I almost asked you to repeat the question, but I'm not going to do that. No, I actually think that we have kind of one of those situations where we have the bad news is we're out of money. The good news is we're out of money. And for the first time in the years that I've been in Denver, I have actually seen people willing to come to the table and talk about what to do. When we have surplus revenue every single year, year over year, what we end up doing is finding ways to use that money. And I was told once by one of Governor Hickenlooper's staff, it's like a feeding frenzy. The problem is that when we have too much money or more than we absolutely need, then people find ways to spend it. This is a time to really take a good look at our budget and take a look at all of those things. As you said, it's truly the things that government has to do. And, you know, since education is in our Constitution, that's one of them. And we've got to figure out how to do it the best way we possibly can.
Thank you very much. And for the
Thank
next question, we will begin with you, and I won't forget you
Hot
again.
dog.
Amendment B would repeal the Gallagher Amendment. Should the repeal fail in November, how would you support efforts to assist rural areas with crucial services?
Well, this goes back to the whole question about special districts and truly how our taxes work. And I actually think it's a bigger question than you just asked. What we have seen, and it's not just COVID, it's actually the downturn in oil and gas, partly largely on the back of legislation that's been passed to regulate it. We're seeing a lot of commercial real estate that's going to be empty in the state. As you see commercial real estate empty, you know that commercial values are going to go down. When commercial values go down, the percentage that all the other commercial entities have to pay goes up. And that, one, drives business out of our state. Two, it does tend to put the lie to this whole thing of how we truly balance revenue, especially on property tax in our state. I think we have to take a look at exactly what we're going to do. But the challenge is I don't really like Prop B, because I worry that a lot of our families who are struggling right now don't need to double their property tax bill. And so that's a real challenge for people right here, right now, today.
Thank you very much. Mr. Richardson?
I believe that if it doesn't happen, how are we going to help generate income? And let's say for the people who are going to be hiring out in the rural areas of the Colorado, who right now do rely on all the gas income. But the gas has not necessarily been reduced because of the fact that we've passed laws to interfere with it. If you look at the price of oil and what's happened with that and gas, I work in an injection molding company, and we work with plastics all the time, and we know how volatile the market is. Right now, we're in a good place where actually some of the commodity resins are actually going down. But what we need to do is be able to have the people who are actually businesses, farms, ranchers, and that, be able to keep their money and reduce the taxes on businesses. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Kirkmeyer?
Yes, thank you. So I too am not in support of Amendment B. I think repealing Gallagher, it will do absolutely nothing to help businesses or help commercial or industrial type properties. In fact, it just won't do anything for it. But in fact, what it will do is, as Representative McKean said, it will increase our residential property taxes. And again, this is the wrong time. Not that I think any time is good, but this is absolutely the wrong time to be increasing residential property taxes. With regard to your question about how would we assist rural Colorado, actually, again, as the executive director of the Department of Local Affairs, that was my #1 job. Is we worked with local governments, because this truly is a local government issue. The state doesn't collect property taxes. Local governments do. So for the local government, it truly is the balance between revenues coming in, property taxes coming in, and the level of service that they can afford to provide. But at the Department of Local Affairs, we worked with them worked with them on how to manage, how to set rates, water rates, that type of thing. But we also had other grant programs like Community Development Block Grant, Community Services Block Grant programs that where we could go out and help them, again, get their infrastructure in place so that they could have development, so that they could have hopefully more commercial businesses come into their community and raise their assessed valuations.
Thank you. Yara?
I am in support of Amendment B and repealing Gallagher. I explain complicated tax code for a living, but I can't do Gallagher in a minute, unfortunately. What I can say is that your property taxes are not going to double. That is just straight misinformation. What we have right now is our local taxes are not able to put enough funding into our schools. And so that state government has to come in and dump in the additional funds so our schools can function. So that is depleting our state funds that could be used for things like infrastructure or really anything you want to get done. If you want to put more money into the police department, well, repealing Gallagher is going to help with that too. So I think there's a lot of misinformation about it, and it's a very complex issue, so it's difficult to explain. To answer your part about rural Colorado, I think people who live in a rural area want to be able to stay there, and we need to make sure we're not asking them to leave for services that are essential. We can do a lot of things virtually. We've become creative in this pandemic, and I think we should extend that creativity to things like telehealth, and that would have to include increasing technology and high-speed internet access in rural areas.
Thank you very much. Ms. Kirkmeyer, you go first, please, for this next question. Please give your opinion of Proposition 118, the proposed paid family and medical leave insurance program.
Sure. So again, in this situation, I'm not in support of 118. Again, I think it will put an additional burden on businesses, especially small businesses. And if they are already having some difficult time staying open and surviving, I think this would just be the final nail in the coffin. Again, I think businesses, whether they're small businesses or large businesses, know what they need to do to recruit employees and recruit people to come work for them, and know what they need to do to keep them working for them. So I think, again, if this passes, I think it just puts additional burden on businesses and could potentially drive even more business out of business.
Thank you very much. Mr. McKean?
A lot of businesses already do this, and it's one of the great advantages that businesses have in offering to their employees a program that helps their employees live their lives. And so, the challenge that I have is that we are going to force a state solution. And let's recall that this solution was already proposed, that we've seen many of the same elements in it. We had a total cost of $2.4 billion for the system that's been proposed. And the amount of benefit that would be offered to people was around $1 billion. So let's just take a minute and think about that. Once you create this organization, this bureaucracy, it's going to take almost twice as much money as it brings in to pay out so that you can simply run it. And we've seen that. That is not misinformation. That is a physical note from the Joint Budget Committee staff of the legislature of your state of Colorado that if you're elected, you'll get to work with. So the deal is, it's just something that we're taking and creating a state solution for something private businesses are already doing. And it creates a competitive advantage for businesses to do that.
Thank you very much. Yara?
I'm a strong supporter of Prop 118. It's close to my heart. It's a big reason why I got involved in politics in the first place. When my son Roman was born, he had some unexpected health complications and had to spend some time in the NICU. During that time where I should have been able to fully be present for my son, I was working 3 jobs to make ends meet. And I was lucky because as an attorney, I was able to make those jobs remote and still be able to do it. I have seen moms and new dads in far worse situations after having a baby. I have seen moms 9 months pregnant picking up a night shift because that's the only way they can take a week or 2 off after their baby is born. I think that this is a deeply personal issue for the families in Colorado. And we have seen studies show that babies have lifelong benefits if they can spend the first 12 weeks with their primary care provider. It would also include a paid medical leave, which is important as we have a large aging population. And there were numerous studies done that showed that this would not close small businesses. It would not harm them.
Thank you very much. Mr. Richardson?
I support this. And the reasons I support this is that when my wife was sick and dying from MS and related complications, I was working for an employer where we had lots of insurance, but it didn't cover all of the payments that were necessary. My employer actually gave me time off when I'd have to go and visit or help my wife with, let's say when she went to get a PICC line put in, or when she had sepsis, developed sepsis and had to go in for 3-hour injections of antibiotics on a daily basis. I couldn't actually not go to work, but my employer let me make up time off the job at different times so that I could actually go in, keep my paycheck and help my wife. Now, this insurance program to me would be a great thing for a lot of small businesses, I believe. If they are not doing it now, they should. Thank you.
Thank you. Another question about the environment, and we'll begin with Yara. Do you think that the Colorado Oil and Gas Commission is meeting a Senate Bill 19-181 requirements in the new regulations currently being written? Do you see the need for any changes in the decisions that the COGCC has made so far?
Thank you for that question. I'm familiar with that commission, but I'm not so sure exactly what the results have been. I will need to gather more information from them. I think we do need to pay attention to what's going on and if regulations are being met. I do think that is very important, but I myself have not seen the results of any studies that have been done. So I would need to be able to look at that first before I make a judgment call. What I will say is my campaign is centered around workers, and that extends to workers in oil and gas. I want to make sure that they have the safety they need, that they're properly taken care of, and most importantly, that they have a job. So I'll leave it at that. I will look into this further. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kirkmeyer? Do we have her? There we go.
Are you coming to me?
Have we lost Ms.
No,
Kirkmeyer? There
she's
she
there.
is.
She's muted.
No, I'm still here.
You're muted, Ms. Kirkmeyer.
On my phone, it says I'm next.
Can you
Can you hear
unmute?
me?
No, I think we're breaking up. I'm not quite sure. While we work on that, why don't we go to Mr.
Can you, I am unmuted.
Do we have a good connection for her, Gwen? Not quite sure. While we work on that, why don't we go to Mr. Richardson? Mr. Richardson, do you see any need for changes in the decisions that the COGCC has made?
No, thank you.
Brief. How about Mr. McKean?
Well, I could say yes, but then I'd have to talk about it. So I had about a half-an-hour conversation with the governor on Tuesday about this, and the decisions that the COGCC are considering that they finalize before they take a formal vote is to engage a 2,000-foot setback between oil and gas facilities and any structure, whether it's occupied or not. It's ridiculous, and it's not just ridiculous, but it's an absolute slap in the face to the people of the state who voted on this very issue and turned it down. And so the people of this state, when we talk about redressing government, the people of the state spoke on this, and then the COGCC was reformed under Senate Bill 181, and everybody thought, well, you know what, this is probably a way to just make all these decisions through rulemaking and through an unelected body, and it's exactly what they did. And so I took that question to the governor, and my question to him was very, very simple. So are you telling me that I cannot put an oil and gas facility within 2,000 feet of a structure? He said yes. Why? Because of health and safety. I asked him, can I build a house within 2,000 feet of an existing well? And he said, well, yes, because you'd sign a disclaimer knowing that that's what you need to do. That is the worst kind of hypocrisy I've ever heard. If this is a health and safety issue, then you darn well better make sure that you are uniformly enforcing what you say on one side is a health safety issue. On the other side, you say, it's okay. And that's the kind of stuff that an unelected body is trying to push over on the people of the state who already spoke on this issue.
Thank you. Have we gotten Ms. Kirkmeyer back so that she could answer this question? Are we
You
still?
might have a lot to say on this question. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. But it sounds like her signal is still
She's
broken up.
still
She's
unmuted.
still there,
Muted.
but muted. We'll go on to the next question in the hopes that we can reconnect with her. Here's another revenue question that we will give you 2 minutes to answer. And we'll begin with Mr. Richardson.
I believe she's reconnected before you move
Oh,
on.
Oh, excellent.
Okay, can you hear me now? Wait.
Yes, we can. And the question was, do you think that the Colorado Oil and Gas Commission is meeting the Senate Bill 19-181 requirements in the new regulations? Do you see any need for changes in the decisions the COGCC has made?
There I am. Okay, I think that they're meeting some of the requirements. There were a lot of regulations that were required within Senate Bill 181. I think with regard to some of the changes I think that need to be made is, I get to hear about his answers, but when Senate 181 went through, it was all predicated on, it was all about local control. We were going to do local control, and local governments who are held accountable and elected, local elected officials are held accountable by their constituents, have more control over and more decision about location and siting. In fact, it's explicit in law that now it went through Senate 81, location and siting is that responsibility and the purview of local government. So I think where the GCC come in with this rulemaking round to usurp local authority and local control, I think that's the portion that they need to work on, and hopefully they will still be trying to work on that.
Terrific, thank you. I'm glad we got you back. Here's another revenue question that we will give our respondents 2 minutes to answer, and we'll begin with Mr. Richardson. Please give your opinion of Proposition 117, requiring additional voter approval of certain new fee-based state enterprises. Would you support or oppose a legislative change to this statutory measure after the election?
Am I unmuted? I'm unmuted. There I go. I'm there. I would, I believe I would not support that change to make it to vote for the changes. That is something that in some ways I believe would be needed to raise revenue and also to help hit the budget shortfalls. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McKean?
So if I get your question correct, you're asking if it fails at the ballot, would I look at a statutory change to put that in place?
We also ask if what your opinion of 117 is.
Okay. 117, I don't often like to see a lot of stricture coming in terms of what you do. However, this is a reaction to what we've been seeing. Hospital provider fee was enterprised and then is off on its own. As we recall, Governor Hickenlooper said, "Oh my God, we have financial disaster if we don't do this." And so they worked it through. Right now, it's going to be the gas tax is going to be reconverted to a fee. And then all of a sudden, it's going to be this enormous fee that can be raised and indexed. Is there something we need to do with gas tax over the years? Well, yeah, we haven't done it for a really long time, but that's up to the voters. And so in the end, I think that it's the best place to get your answers as the voters. But this is a reaction truly to what people have seen over the last several years, where we have this way of of changing things that were taxes into fees and then creating an enterprise to put them in and do what we want with them. And if you recall, we still have a lot of a hangover from when Governor Ritter changed things from taxes to fees and put a whole lot on our car registrations that has angered the people of rural Colorado for pretty much the last 30 years. So I support the idea behind it. I think that often when we get these kinds of things, it's difficult to make sure it's the very best. But would I consider a statutory change? I'd have to look at how it gets written.
Thank you very much. Yara?
So I oppose Prop 117. I don't love this way of collecting revenue, and I don't love the structure, but with Tabor, this is unfortunately the only way that we can have revenue for our state to provide essential services for people. So I think that it's important that we vote no on this, but I think that structurally we need to change things in general. I don't want to put costs on anyone who isn't the ultra wealthy or a giant corporation or a billionaire, and it's hard to structure things properly with how things are right now. To go to your second point of your question, if I would change things once elected, no, because no matter what happens at the ballot, that's what we need to respect. You know, that's the people's voice. And if they want to vote for something and I think that it's a horrible thing for our state, I'm going to respect what they vote on. And it's our job to educate now so that they know exactly what their vote means. But I don't believe it's the role of the legislator to try to undo a vote that we don't appreciate or that we don't think is the right way things go. We work for the people, and I will respect what the people decide.
Thank you very much. Ms. Kirkmeyer?
Okay, so I am going to need you to repeat the question, please.
Please give your opinion of 117, and would you support or oppose a legislative change to this statutory measure after the election?
So I'll take the second question first, and the answer would be most likely no. Again, I would agree with Yara on this one, where actually I believe that we need to respect the will of the voters. And there might be some portions of it, though, that need some statutory implementation. And so that would be the only section that I would be looking at, but I would make sure that we adhere to what the will of the voters is. With regard to 117, I am in support of it. You know, when we passed Tabor all the way back in 1992, it was to limit the growth of government. And over the course of that time, since 1992, and when this took place in 1993 and came into being, state government has done everything they can possible to try and figure out workarounds around Tabor. And I think that's wrong. I mean, again, this goes back to the will of the voters. The voters passed Tabor. Granted, it was the third time, but they passed it, and they passed it overwhelmingly, and they keep passing it. I mean, we just had Proposition CC where they just said, no, we want to keep Tabor in place. So I think with regard to the fees, where again, the government has figured out a workaround and they kind of take those off the books, if you will, then I don't think that's proper. So I believe, you know, I'm in support of 117.
Thank you very much. This next question is about health. And we'll begin with Yara. And Yara, will give you 2 minutes for this answer. What can we do at the state level to be better prepared for the next pandemic? How should the state and the public health department be preparing now for a possible second wave of COVID-19?
Yeah, thank you for this question. You know, I don't have a medical background, but I listen to the experts when it comes to a field where I might not have that background myself. And so I think that we need to defer to what those medical experts are saying. Things as simple as wearing a mask, staying socially distanced. If you have to have a gathering, it needs to be outdoors with a mask distanced. Those things we need to take seriously. I don't always agree with everything our governor does, but when it came to keeping us safe, I think he made some really tough decisions and did what he needed to do. And now we're at a point where we're opening things back up, and you know, people are able to go back to work, but people are still hurting and they still need to recover from that point in time we were shut down. So I think economically that there's a lot of work that we need to do to get people financially back on their feet. But as far as Safety, I think we need to increase safe testing. There's rapid tests that aren't always said to be so accurate. So we really need to work on that, because having that rapid testing, I think, is crucial to keeping people safe. But I also think it's common sense. When the medical experts all agree that wearing a mask is helpful and staying 6 feet apart is helpful, then I think it's common courtesy to do that. My son is high risk. My pediatrician told me that I need to do everything in my power to not let him get it. I help take care of my husband's grandmother, who is in a high risk pool. And I understand firsthand that anxiety of having something like this out there, knowing that it could take the life of someone you love. And for us to not have the common courtesy to follow medical regulations that are agreed upon by doctors is cruel. And we need to look out for each other and look out for those that are higher risk with this thing. But as far as the precautions, I think we definitely need to, listen to the doctors and increase our testing.
Thank you very much. Ms. Kirkmeyer?
Sure, thank you. So, when we went into this pandemic and this emergency, we went into it with a couple of goals, which was a good thing, because that's what you need to do. You need to have a goal. You need to know what you're going into, and you also need to know how you're going to be coming out of that. That's the part where we failed. Going into it, we were trying to blunt the curve. We were attempting to ensure that hospitals would be prepared. The reality is, over the course of this pandemic, not at one time were our hospitals over capacity. Were they overtaxed? Were they not able to do what they needed to do? Yet we went ahead and shut them down from doing what they needed to do as far as elective surgeries and other things. We've had people who had to stop taking like their chemo. Maybe they weren't getting some of their elective surgeries that they needed to get done. Somebody was making those calls. I don't think that was proper. But I think as we move through this to be better prepared, there's a lot of lessons learned here. I think the number one is communication. The lack of communication during this emergency pandemic and during this emergency disaster and with the emergency orders, especially since when you look at it, you look at local governments, we weren't communicated with on any level at any point with regard to this pandemic. We got the information of what was going on in the state the same time everybody else did in a press conference. So I think in this one, to be better prepared for the next pandemic, everybody needs to work on their communication skills, because it's about communication. And I think that's where we had some issues in this state.
Thank you very much. Mr. McKean?
Well, thank you for this question, because I was actually just reading an article this morning that brought up a few of these things. I guess communication is one of the words that we ought to use. I think we take what we've learned in this first real pandemic of the 21st century and put it to use. One of the really bad problems we have right now is a desire to never be wrong. And so what we've had, a story in the paper this morning, was that several of the sites, including one in Loveland here, that were the field hospitals, are being shut down. One of the lines of that story stuck in my brain, and that was, none of the 5 sites have ever seen a patient. So what the people of Colorado don't know is that renting the convention center in Denver, Colorado, to make it a field hospital so that patients that have never come there could come there at a moment's notice cost the citizens of this state $66,000 a day. And the problem is that we put $4 million into the ranch up here and paved over our livestock arena so that we could put hospital beds in it. We created hospital beds in Pueblo and Grand Junction. So take what we've learned and understand that we really need a much better rubric to understand what decisions we're making when, and then also when to give our citizens and our residents the hope that we're coming out of it. Tell them what you're looking for. Communication is key. The governor should be telling the citizens of this state, here's what we're looking for. This is what this point of normal looks like, rather than just suddenly hearing an announcement that we're going from safe at home to safer, stay at home to safer at home to other things. We need to know what that looks like and where we're going. Will more people wear face masks if they know that we're heading toward reducing this second wave and the curve of it? Absolutely, of course they will, because Coloradans can be counted on one amazing thing, and that's to look out for each other. And so communication is huge. We need to take the mistakes that we've made in this and understand too the budget impact that it's brought and not make them again.
Thank you very much. Mr. Richardson?
Where I work, when this happened, we are considered an essential employer or in business. We sell plastic parts for the Air Force and armed forces, and also people who supply them. So we had to, and also agricultural. So we had to stay open. We took 2 days to get everything together and cleaned up in the offices and the production floor, and we went after it. We had no work people leave or miss work due to sickness. So we actually follow all the guidelines. Social distancing. We have our production meetings that we have, which have 5 people. We're at least 6 feet apart. We wear our masks. And then when the weather turned nicer, we went outside and had all our meetings outside. But I see today that we are now at a high risk in Larimer County for new positive cases. We've had 24 in the last 24 hours. And it also tells us that we have 97 or 87% of our ICU beds already in process or being used. So I don't know where we get that there's no problem with people. What we need to do in the future is follow all the guidelines, and the information is there, not just from a press release from the state. Larimer County every day sends you out a notice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next question, we will begin with Ms. Kirkmeyer. Is there any legislation you are hoping to introduce or champion if you are elected?
Just so you know, I believe Ms. Kirkmeyer is having trouble getting back in.
Has she? We'll try to come back to her then. Mr. Richardson, is there any legislation you're hoping to introduce or champion if you are elected?
No, I haven't given that much thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McKean?
Well, you know, we get 5 bills coming into a new legislative session, and I usually sort of sparingly take out 5 titles. One of the ones that I really think we need to look for is a remod of the legislation that gave the governor the authority to create or to declare an emergency and maintain these emergency orders. The challenge is that we only have a 120-day session in Colorado, and therefore the legislature is sort of at the whim of the governor, a part of these conversations only when he wants us to be. And I don't think that that's right. And it's not just this governor, it would be any governor. It would be a Republican governor with a Republican legislature should ask the same questions. And so I really think that what we need to do is go back and look at what we did in the wake of SARS and MRSA, and how we created this legislation that gave the governor all of the authority over the state and to really run it all by himself through executive orders. And so I think the legislature needs to be a part of that. And I think we bring ourselves back into that picture.
Thank you very much. Yara?
What I see right now is our state in crisis. You know, 33% are facing eviction. 1 in 3 have said they're not food secure, and they don't know how they're going to get their next meal. 40% of our households have seen a loss in income. So it's time for us to take some bold action, and we have to do it now. The piece of legislation I'd want to champion would be a coronavirus relief package. And I want that to include a few different things. One being relief for individuals and small businesses. And relief can look like a few different things, and I'd push for all of them, and we'll see what we can get through. It can be stimulus checks, an excellent loan package for our small businesses, one that can't be abused by giant corporations so that our small businesses can get the benefit of it. And there are some things I'd like to change about the tax treatment of the PPP loan for our small businesses. I think another big part of it needs to be that if you have coronavirus and you're receiving health care and because of that, that should be covered. It helps our individuals. It's a no-brainer during a pandemic, but it helps our small businesses too. No one wants to be a place of an outbreak, and it doesn't help business if that happens. And our workers right now don't feel comfortable being able to go to the doctor because they're worried about what that bill might look like. So during a pandemic, I think it's a no-brainer that we at least provide covered health care for people who are sick with the virus.
Thank you very much. We'll go on to the next question in the hopes that Ms. Kirkmeyer can rejoin us. And Yara, we will begin with you. If elected, what do you consider will be your greatest strength and your greatest challenge?
I think my greatest strength is that I'm responsive to the people. I am 100% grassroots funded. I deny all money from giant corporations, from lobbyists or dark money groups. And I do that because I want the voters to be the ones holding me accountable, not these groups that call back for favors or try to pull the strings later to try to get you to vote in their favor. And we see it happen all the time where some dark money group will dump in tens of thousands of dollars into a race. Then that candidate or that politician starts rattling off their talking points, not doing what's best for the people. So I think my greatest strength is that will not be me. I will be responding to the people and what they want because it's the people who are electing me. My greatest challenge is that I had a bold agenda before we had a global pandemic. And you know, we had our state here and I wanted to bring it up a notch, and now we need to just get back to baseline. So my biggest challenge is to prioritize. You know, I think that getting us back to that baseline and doing things like providing coronavirus relief to people and to small businesses is crucial, but things take time in the legislature and it's a 2-year term. So to think about what would be my next priorities after that and to have to make some tough decisions.
Thank you very much. Mr. McKean?
I think my greatest strength coming into this has been something I've shown over the last 4 years, and that is that I literally will talk to anyone. Just ask my kids at the grocery store; they get tired of it after a while. But it is that I listen to my constituents. I listen to every single voice, and that means the voices of people from, you know, meeting them in the spaghetti aisle of King Soopers or meeting the Colorado Chamber of Commerce folks who are, oh my God, lobbyists, who come and tell me what corporations and what big business and actually what small business really, really needs in terms of relief from some of the governmental government that they see coming their way. And so the challenge is, who do you listen to? You listen to everyone. That's your job. And I think that that's truly where the best skill sets come out, is that the relationships are what matter. You're listening to people. You're trying to do what you can. The greatest challenge is that we're out of money. We don't have money to go and add a whole bunch of programs to get out of coronavirus struggles. What we need to do is figure out how to get business in this state on its feet again. We need to make sure that we take every hurdle we can out of their way, and we need to make sure that we prioritize the little money we have. We have a $30 billion budget. Out of $30 billion, $12 billion is the money that we get to decide over. And right now we're going to see probably north of a 30% cut to that $12 billion so that we can actually get the job done for education, for infrastructure, for all of the things we need to do. And so, you know, really, I think that's our biggest challenge, is being good stewards and actually being able to prioritize. Something we're not that good at, but we're going to get better at it because we have to. Necessity demands it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Richardson?
I think my greatest strength is the ability to work with people and the ability to brainstorm and also problem solving. And coming up with new ideas, new ways to do something is also one of my strong points. Also, I reiterate what Hugh just said. The biggest challenge is going to be to get the state back on its feet and be able to get the money that we need to keep essential services going, and also infrastructure and new business into the state. Thank you.
Thank you. It's now time for our final comments from each of our candidates, and you will each have 2 minutes to make your closing comments. And it would appear we still don't have Ms. Kirkmeyer. So we will begin with Yara.
Thank you. And thank you so much to the League for putting on this wonderful forum. This was a lot of great discussions on important issues. Colorado is a beautiful place to live. And what makes it so beautiful is the people here. Coloradans are kind. And I tell my 3-year-old, the most important thing you can be in the world is kind. We take care of each other when times are tough. But right now, we need our government to help us out too. What more is a government for than to help out in difficult times and to do it for the people? We have a lot of politicians and candidates that are okay with the government helping out as long as it's helping them personally or their giant corporate donors. When it comes to anyone else, you're on your own. That's not a system that is working. It is leaving crucial groups behind. It's leaving behind small businesses. It's leaving behind older adults. It's leaving behind the working class. It's leaving behind our families. And it's that kind of selfishness that results in things not getting done. I'm running for office to build a government and a Colorado that works for everyone. One that is responsive to the people, not to the donors. One where everyone has their needs met, regardless of how much money you make or what your background is. It's why I reject all of that corporate money. It's why I reject that lobbyist money. I'll hear them out because people lobby on important issues, but they're not going to be able to hold me and tell me I need to vote a certain way or they're going to pull their funding. And that's something that not a lot of candidates can say. I hope that you will join the movement that I am building here in Northern Colorado. My district is a lot of Larimer County and part of Weld, so a lot of people that we need to get to. And we have a boots on the ground grassroots movement, and I hope that you'll be part of it. You can sign up to volunteer or to help out our campaign at yaraforcolorado.com. It's YARAFOR Colorado.com. And on that page, there is a contact me tab. My cell phone number is listed on there. Feel free to reach out if you want to share a story with me or ask me a question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And before we go on, our technician has asked me to send a message to Ms. Kirkmeyer. I'm to tell her to turn off her camera and just do audio until her connection improves. And hopefully she can be working on that while we ask Mr. Richardson to make his closing comments.
I'm used to having the moderator turn me on and off, sorry. Anyway, my closing comments are similar to my beginning comments. I believe that I can do a good job for the state. I believe that I would love to have the chance to be able to serve and use the ability that I have for medical issues and disabled issues to try to come up and help with that in aspect. And I think, vote for me. My name will not appear on the ballot. So fill in the oval and write in Vern Richardson on the line in District 51. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McKean?
Well, thank you very much. Thank you guys for putting this on. It's something we do every 2 years, and I think it does help people out, and you ask a lot of important questions. I actually want to take most of my time to thank Vern. To thank Vern for his service and to also thank him for running, because this is not an easy thing to do. It's not an easy decision to make, and I appreciate you more than you know. And actually, what I would suggest is that you and I sit down and talk about what can be done on some of those issues, so that no matter who wins, we know that some of those issues move forward. And I think that that's an important point, that we all have these conversations so that we can really get a little bit deeper into what drives us and what we can do. I literally think that that's the very conversation that we need to be having more often. And it's when we don't. I was talking to Governor Romer about a year ago about the loss of trust in government. And so often the loss of trust in government is because we get into our camps, and that's the only way we can look at an issue. It's the only way we can decide something. And often, what I tell people is that they're voting for me usually because they can see how I think. They don't necessarily agree with me, and they don't necessarily agree with all of the things that I believe, but they know how I think, and they know how I weigh an issue, and that's what helps people understand that this is the guy that they would like to see. So, I would ask for your vote, but Vern, thank you. Thank you for running. Thank you for jumping in here. And this conversation doesn't stop here, and it doesn't stop with this race. It goes on, and I appreciate you a tremendous amount. And I appreciate you guys for putting this on.
Thank you very much. And I see that Ms. Kirkmeyer is back online, and we would really hope that you would give us your closing comments, and you have 2 minutes.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I don't know why my phone just kept disconnecting. But anyways, thank you for allowing me the 2 minutes. And thank you for having this forum tonight. I greatly appreciate it. I know it takes a lot of time and patience to put it on, so thank you very much. Again, my name is Barbara Kirkmeyer. I'm running for State Senate in District 23. I would very much appreciate your vote and your consideration. And since I wasn't able to answer all the questions, if you'd like to find out where I stand on the issues, please go to my webpage. It's kirkmeyerforcolorado.com. And please find out more about me. Again, really appreciate the opportunity to be able to come on this evening and have the opportunity to talk to the voters. Thank you again. And my webpage is kirkmeyerforcolorado.com.
Thank you very much. I'm glad we've overcome that technical glitch. A big thank you to all the candidates who participated in the forum, and thanks to the Loveland Public Library and its technical staff for its assistance in making this presentation possible. And thanks to the many league members who work to make such a forum possible. The League of Women Voters encourages all eligible voters to register, make sure your registration is up to date, and vote in the 2020 election. Ballots will be mailed to registered voters on October 9th. And we remind you that to be completely informed, please check out vote411.org and votelarimer.org. Again, thank you all very much.